U serijalu Rijekama ka zapadu pratili smo priču o razvoju civilizacije od njenog nastanka na Bliskom istoku. Dali smo novi pogled o širenju civilizacije svijetom, od praskozorja čovječanstva i prvih gradova i carstava Mezopotamije. Vidjeli smo kako je moderno doba došlo na Bliski istok, ali i kako je on uspio očuvati svoje drevno naslijeđe. Tok civilizacije doveo nas je do modernog doba, ali vidjeli smo kako je Bliski istok pomogao da se oblikuje ta priča, jer je bio mjesto na kojem su se odvijale sve glavne epizode u razvoju civilizacije, od zemljoradnje do pisanja. Tu su napravljeni ogromni koraci u naučnom i religijskom mišljenju. I tako je rođen moderni svijet. Na ovom istraživačkom putovanju velikih razmjera putovali smo rijekama ka zapadu.
Kad god izbije neka priča, vijesti se velikom brzinom prošire po cijelom svijetu. Dešavanja je moguće promatrati i o njima izvještavati s udaljenosti od nekoliko hiljada milja, gotovo u trenutku dok se događaju. Danas informacija obiđe cijelu planetu dok trepnete okom. Robe putuju brzo širom planete. Čini se da se civilizacija mijenja pred našim očima. Često vidimo kako događaji unutar jedne države utiču na stavove ljudi širom svijeta. Ipak, činjenica da je svijet u kojem danas živimo međusobno povezan, znači da pritisci i izazovi s kojima se svi suočavamo postaju sve veći. Živimo u jedinstvenom vremenu. Pitanje je kako se na najbolji način možemo suočiti sa novim izazovima. I dok su napadi od 11. septembra protresli Zapad, umjerene struje iz islamskog svijeta bile su jednako užasnute. Bila je to nova vrsta terorizma u ime islama, gdje je ekstremni saudijski vjerski vođa sa sjedištem u Afganistanu mogao s druge strane svijeta organizovati i provesti razoran napad na samo srce Njujorka. Napadi od 11. septembra naglasili su mogućnost da se neki ljudi unutar islamskog svijeta okrenu ekstremizmu.
A great struggle is going on within the Muslim world. I think you have Muslims who have a very literal understanding of the Quran, of the Sunnah. Those who insist upon rules and regulations and so on. Of course, within this huge category of Muslims, you have various gradations. You have some who, because of that very literal approach, they would be prepared to take it to the extreme. They would be prepared to slaughter any number of people in order to achieve their goals.
The scourge of mankind today is really international terrorism. And the philosophy of international terrorism, whether it's Al-Qaeda or whoever you want to call, is this idea they reject coexistence. They reject it. And therefore, they will abuse religion, and in the name of religion, will perform acts which are inhumane.
Sermaye, bilgi ve değerlerin hızla küreselleştiği dünyamızda maalesef nefret, korku, hoşgörüsüzlük de küreselleşiyor. Bu süreçte toplumların birbirini daha fazla tanıması, yanlış anlamaların ortadan kalkması beklenirken ön yargı ve çatışmaların derinleşmesi gibi bir tehditle karşı karşıya bulunuyoruz.
With so much prejudice, you hear Islam equivalent to terrorism. You hear the debate on scarf is equivalent to sexism or undermining the liberty of women. You talk about the Sharia is chopping of hands. So you see, the ignorance is phenomenal.
Moderna komunikacijska tehnologija omogućila je manjinskoj grupi poput Al-Kaide da svoju ekstremističku poruku proširi po cijelom svijetu. Bez modernih tehnologija, napad poput onog na Tornjeve blizance ne bi bio moguć. Količina informacija dostupnih na internetu eksponencijalno se povećava, no ne i njihov kvalitet. Mnogi korisnici interneta saznaju samo ono što žele da znaju. U tom smislu to može biti medij vrlo uskog opsega i može poticati predrasude radije nego proširivati vidike.
We live in an increasingly interconnected world. We see the process of globalization, which unleashed an incredible forces of exchange, of interconnection, of more knowledge about each other. I believe that we see two paradoxical tendencies. On one side, we have this incredible connectivity. We know what is happening on the other side of the world with the speed of the light. But on the other hand, we don't see that the world has become more tolerant. Just on the contrary, we see in some cases that intolerance grows. We see also that everything that is accompanying this process of globalization with mistrust, with xenophobia, with not accepting the others is a very alarming tendency.
There are many walls standing between cultures. They are the walls of ignorance, they are the walls of prejudices. We have to pull down the walls that have been established throughout the centuries.
Ove kulturološke granice i predrasude još uvijek su žive u umovima mnogih ljudi.
If we want to survive as a species, we have to transcend this sense of civilizational superiority or civilizational warfare. We need, as a practical matter, to find modes of cooperation, ways of understanding each other, learning to live well together on this increasingly globalized and unified planet.
Uistinu se mnogo radi na tome da se ljudi ohrabre da uče o drugim kulturama.
It's the overall mission of UNESCO to bring peace in the minds of people, to promote tolerance, to promote dialogue among the different cultures, to create responsible citizens in every country, to promote respect for human rights and dignity. Knowing about each other, respecting each other, learning how to be tolerant, knowing about each other's heritage, respecting this heritage, sharing our own histories. I think this is the biggest challenge of living in this diverse world.
In some ways, one needs internal dialogues of civilization as well as dialogues among the distinct civilizations. Because I feel, at least living as I do in the United States, that we need this internal dialogue in order to reconcile our sense of human rights, multiculturalism, the values of cultural and civilizational diversity with this upsurge of a nativist, xenophobic attitude toward others, and particularly directed toward the Islamic world.
U prošlosti su civilizacije imale ograničene načine komuniciranja. Poruke su se fizički morale prenositi sa jednog dijela svijeta na drugi. Čak i unutar jednog carstva prenošenje informacija do glavnog grada trajalo bi mjesecima. Poznavanje drugih kultura često je bilo vrlo ograničeno. Nesporazumi i nepovjerenje bili su uobičajeni. Ipak, uprkos ovoj raznovrsnosti, postoje univerzalni izazovi sa kojima se svi suočavamo, od resursa do politike i ekonomije.
The challenges which confront us are also global, and you have multiple crises confronting us, unlike in the past. We have the environmental crisis, very, very serious. It has brought us to the brink of the precipice. We also have a food crisis, we have an energy crisis. We may be facing a water crisis in the future, which may be more serious than any of the crises that we have known in the past. We have a political crisis of global dimensions because we are witnessing a shift in power from the centers of power in the West to the East. We have a financial crisis, an economic crisis. So if you see it from different dimensions, we are in the midst of multiple crises, which makes our situation very unique.
Moderne komunikacijske tehnologije svijet su učinile znatno manjim mjestom. Narodi su sada prisiljeni da se više oslanjaju jedni na druge, i to na više načina. Pritisak na društvo ne vrši samo ultrabrzi protok informacija, nego i činjenica da ljudi sve više putuju po svijetu.
We live in cities that are increasingly diverse. We see with the huge migration of populations, with the natural also exchange of young people, of universities. We see that very many people just go somewhere, place in the world. They start living, they start also raising their families, and managing this diversity is the biggest challenge in our contemporary world.
Sve veća međusobna povezanost i činjenica da moderni život prelazi granice nacionalnog, mnoga je navela na pomisao da se krećemo ka sve homogenijem globalnom društvu.
Medeniyetlerin globalleşen dünyada alacağı tavır elbette ki tek bir medeniyete doğru yönelme olmayacaktır. Ama farklı medeniyetler bir araya gelerek kendi ortak değerlerini birbirlerine sunacaklardır. Ve dolayısıyla yarının dünyasında ortak değerler üzerine inşa edilmiş yeni bir medeniyet konseptinin oluşacağını düşünüyorum. Bu yapılırken medeniyet bilincinin daha da canlı hale getirilmesi ve medeniyet bilincinin toplumlarda yaygınlaştırılması gerekir. Zaten insanlığın gidişi de buna doğru olmak durumundadır. Ne yazık ki çatışmalar, savaşlar, terör ve benzeri hususlar toplumları ayrıştırıcı yönde gelişmektedir. Bu ayrıştırıcılığa karşı ortak değerler etrafında buluşmaktan başka çaremiz yoktur.
There is the danger of globalization bringing about homogenization. You know, everything is the same. But that is no longer the case. I can only give you the example of the United States. When I arrived in America as an immigrant, having survived the Holocaust in Europe, the whole approach in America was called the melting pot. Everyone should be American, only English, okay? Well, things have changed in America. as they have changed the world. You have diversity. And basically the great challenge today is how do you have unity in diversity? So the challenge is really the diversity that contributes to growth, to the excitement. When you have diversity, you have to think pure gold is very weak. You have to have an alloy, okay? Same thing with silver, precious metal. So the spice of life is added by diversity.
Kako zajednice postaju sve raznolikije, postoji čak i veća potreba za dobrim obrazovanjem. Potreba da se uči povijest i kultura drugih.
Sometimes we forget that in order to respect each other, we have to know more about each other. This is a process that, in my view, should never end. UNESCO has started that long time ago, decades ago, with the elaboration of histories of the world for the different regions and the contribution of different cultures also to the world civilization and for the world culture. So trying also to use heritage as a tool for reconciliation and not for dividing us.
Despite our life in what is usually called global city, our experience in the last half a century clearly shows that different civilizations are going to be with us. The differences, genuine differences, are becoming more and more important. And as a matter of fact, that is good. That is good because life becomes richer if we have different cultural, civilizational values, as long as they are in keeping with the basic, commonly shared values that we have.
We're all one. We're a single civilization of human beings that have common bonds developed over decades and decades of, admittedly, sometimes in crisis, sometimes in conflict, but in the end, as communications in terms of travel, transportation, education, we're increasingly finding and identifying common goals, common values, common interests, and I think that's the important message.
I think somehow humanity will learn to accommodate, to live with each other. There will be problems. I mean, we have had problems throughout our history, human history. But, I think we become more and more aware of the fact that this world is very small, the fact that we need a new culture, a new civilization, a new convergence of civilizations that would address the issues of our differences and would bring us more together. I think there's a need for global awareness that we belong to this world together, and there's a need for global consciousness that we must take care of each other.
Na historiju se tradicionalno gleda kao na povijest sukoba različitih kultura, na povijest ratova i konflikta. Ipak, time se ignoriraju velike razmjene između kultura. Ovaj dijalog i poštovanje od izuzetne su važnosti kada su u pitanju neki od najvećih globalnih izazova. Nema sumnje da je od svih izazova s kojima se svijet danas suočava, globalno zagrijavanje prvi na listi prioriteta. Postoji ozbiljna potreba za ujedinjenim svjetskim naporima kako bismo prestali biti ovisni o fosilnim gorivima. Ukoliko se ovo ne riješi, posljedice će osjetiti svi, bez obzira u šta vjerovali i kojoj kulturi pripadali. No, da li je globalno zagrijavanje samo znanstveni izazov? Tu su također i kulturna i filozofska pitanja.
I think the relationship between science and religion is really crucial for thinking about issues such as climate change, which requires not just an understanding of the scientific questions, but also a question of our morals and our ethics and our religious attitudes to the natural world around us.
One of the things that I find particularly beautiful in the Quran and in the Bible is the frequency with which humans are asked to look at the signs of God in nature. Look at creation, look at the beauty of the world. Well, what science, or at least the natural sciences, have traditionally done is to explore that beauty, is to delve into the wonder of God's creation. So for many periods of the history of both Islam and Christianity, there has not been conflict in the way that science operated in the service of religion.
Istok i Zapad su se kroz historiju obično razlikovali u svome pristupu svijetu prirode.
In the East, in the origin of the philosophy is to conform, to respect, and to live in agreement with the rhythm of nature, while the wisdom of the West is trying to control nature, trying to manipulate nature. That's the human expression of power. You feel that you have enough power to direct the course of the river, to control the way in which nature moves. And oftentimes you will have problem fighting with nature.
In both Islam and Christianity, the intersections and the interactions between science and religion have undergone change over the centuries. But quite often, science has operated as in some ways a handmaid to theology, a way of knowing and of learning about God's creative activity in the world.
It is very, very important that we have harmony between science and religion. Religion needs science because its teachings, its dogmas can only become better understood, can only become enlightened if it is explained by knowledge. And science is a very, very important way of explaining the dogma. So in other words, what we call science can be a very, very useful ally of religion from that point of view.
Without that religious understanding, we're not going to have the moral imperative, as it were, to change our ways and our habits of consumption that have been so much part of the impact on the environment and on the natural world. So I would say that in very practical ways, the global questions such as environmental issues and the climate change and so on, those sort of issues really bring to the surface crucial areas where different religions can come together in relationship to scientific understanding.
I think that the cooperation of science and religion is very important at this time in our world, maybe uniquely important. The science and religion traditionally are both parts of wisdom. From a biblical perspective, wisdom is knowledge of the world informed by reverence for God. But that marriage of religion and science that produces wisdom is a marriage that needs to be renewed and strengthened in our time because we are too powerful at this point not to be wise.
Internet i moderni mediji presudni su za razvoj ovog znanja i poimanja stvari. Istina, ti mediji služe i za širenje ekstremističkih poruka, ali i kao pokretač dobrih stvari. Kada su 2003. Sjedinjene države i Britanija objavile rat Iraku, to je potaklo najveće proteste ikada viđene na Zapadu. Procjenjuje se da je između 6 i 9 miliona ljudi učestvovalo u protestima u skoro 60 zemalja tokom samo jednog vikenda. Sve ovo koordinirano pomoću moderne komunikacijske tehnologije. Ova lakoća pristupa informacijama putem weba znači da je despotskim režimima postalo sve teže da od svog naroda kriju istinu. To je možda jedna od stvari koje su bile potaknute nizom revolucija u arapskom svijetu 2011. poznatih kao Arapsko proljeće.
These people just want their freedom. These people just want to live normal life. We just want water. We just want electricity. We just want to live a normal life. We want to go to school. We want to have normal lives as everyone else is living in the whole world.
Od Tunisa do Egipta, od Libije do Omana, pa do sve krvavijeg sukoba u Siriji, obični ljudi u arapskom svijetu suprotstavljaju se neizabranim despotima koji već decenijama drže vlast u regiji.
People are saying we want justice, we want fairness. We don't like elites who abuse their power. We don't want this. We don't want corruption, which I think is something very important. Again, the Quran is the only scripture that openly condemns corruption. And so you have Muslims going back to fundamental values and principles.
ومن ثم يجب أن ننظر إلى الثورات العربية باعتبارها مدخلاً من مداخل التغيير المأمول في النظام العالمي، أن نجاح الثورات العربية أو بعضها سيكون شرطاً مهماً من الشروط التي ستمكننا في مجتمعاتنا من أن نساهم بمدخل حضاري فيما يسمى الحضارة العالمية لتصبح حضارة عالمية على وجه الحقيقة. فالحضارة الغربية هي التي تقول أنها الحضارة العالمية، والوضع الحالي ليس وضع حضارة عالمية واحدة، ولكن نحن نبحث عن حضارة عالمية تشارك فيها حضارات عديدة، ولكن لن تستطيع هذه الحضارات العديدة أن تشارك إلا إذا أحدثت تغييراً وحققت قدر من القوة المادية يستند إليها نموذجها.
I am a firm believer that there's certain values that are characteristic of the great religious traditions that withstand the test of time. For instance, freedom is something that every man and woman yearns for in different periods of history. We go back to the Bible, the Torah, the whole festival of Passover is from freedom, from slavery to freedom. No human being wants to be a slave. No human being wants to be enslaved. So whenever you have a political system that seeks to extinguish that yearning for freedom that each one of us has, that system is an autocratic tyranny and has no future. And what you've seen, the upheaval in North Africa and Middle East, is precisely human nature, a value of freedom which has surfaced.
Na prvim danima protesta u Libiji, mladi demonstranti su uspostavili TV stanicu pomoću interneta i satelitske opreme kućne izrade kako bi svijetu ispričali šta se zaista događa u Libiji. Sve uz pomoć kompjutera, mobilnih telefona i satelitske tehnologije. Režim se više nije imao gdje skrivati.
أن محفز أساسي ومحرك أساسي من محركات الثورة في مصر وفي تونس أيضاً وعي الشباب ونضجهم وانفتاحهم على العالم. هؤلاء الشباب الذين شعروا أنهم جزء من منظومة العالم، أنهم يسمعون الحديث عن حقوق الإنسان والحريات ويرونها في كل مكان ويتأسون على لماذا لا توجد في بلدانهم، وهم المسلحين بالعلم ومسلحين بالتكنولوجيا الحديثة في التواصل الاجتماعي عبر الآليات الجديدة عبر الإنترنت وغيرها، وهم الذين لهم رؤية وفكر منفتح على العالم، يشعرون أنهم يريدون تغيير أوطانهم وتغيير العالم ليكون أكثر سلاما واستقرارا للجميع.
Now we have this upsurge of rebellion in the Arab world, and which I view as perhaps the most transformative of all of these political movements, because it has the possibility of bringing into being a new type of democracy based on respect for fundamental human rights and a greater sensitivity to economic and social equity. It also would vindicate this notion that history is now being shaped by soft power, by nonviolent political movements, and that hard power is in decline as an agent of historical change.
Mirni protesti su u porastu širom svijeta, od demonstracija Okupirajmo Wall Street u Njujorku do raširenog poziva na promjene kroz masovne peticije na internetu. Uz veliku globalnu financijsku krizu i promjene administracije u Bijeloj kući, nema sumnje da je svijet sada sasvim drugačije mjesto od onoga što je bio prije 10 godina.
We meet at a time of great tension between the United States and Muslims around the world. Tension rooted in historical forces that go beyond any current policy debate. The relationship between Islam and the West includes centuries of coexistence and cooperation, but also conflict and religious wars. Moreover, the sweeping change brought by modernity and globalization led many Muslims to view the West as hostile to the traditions of Islam.
مع الإسلام المطلوب في الحياة العامة عدل وتكافل وسلام وإخاء، وهذه كل الناس يقبلونها، ما في أحد يرفضها بفطرة الإنسان. ولذلك الحكم الإسلامي أو الحكم المدني الإسلامي هو عليه أن يؤدي في الحياة العامة هذه المبادئ، وأي شيء يختلف مع هذه المبادئ ليس من الإسلام في شيء. بالنسبة للمسلم حتى لو لم يعلم أي أحد يعلم أن الله يعلم وأنه سيحاسب، وبالتالي لا بد أن يقصد إلى الخير وإلى السلام مثل فطرة أي إنسان آخر، بس التزام أخلاقي. الإضافة هنا الالتزام الأخلاقي. الإنسان خلق في هذه الأرض ليكون المدير لهذه الأرض، أي أنه مستخلف، وهنا هو مسؤول عن إرادته، هل إرادة خير أو إرادة غير خير. هذه حقه ومسؤوليته، ولا إكراه في الدين. لا يمكن أن تكره إنسان على أن يتبع ما ليس هو مقتنع به، هذا ليس من حق أحد. المصير هو حسابه على الله وليس على أي إنسان. وهنا ماذا يقول القرآن الكريم أو الرؤية الكونية الروحية؟ لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين أو يخرجوكم من دياركم ويوصيك بالجار. لم يقل إذا كان مسلم وإلا يهودي أو نصراني أو هندوسي.
So living in difficult times, it's the responsibility and duty of every Muslim who's living in the West to be able to act as a good ambassador of Islam and live a virtuous and good life and try to explain the religion to Americans, most of whom are very fine and good people. They just have the wrong information fed to them.
the voices of the moderates must be very strong. So we have to be ready to speak up. If it is important that we speak up loud so that people can hear what we say. If we don't, then the actions of those people who are at extreme will be catching the attention of the people and also create a belief that, oh, look at Islam, look at the Muslims. What are they for? What are they good for? They just want to create problem. And this is something which is totally unacceptable.
U ovom serijalu istraživali smo univerzalni koncept civilizacije islama i način na koji je ona doprinijela svjetskim civilizacijama. Tu su čuveni svjetski znanstvenici, filozofi, arhitekti i umjetnici. To je tradicija čije obnavljanje nudi velike nade za budućnost. Istražili smo na koji način je ovaj prostor milenijima bio most između istoka i zapada. Tu je nastala Turska i razvila se u državu sa različitom i raznovrsnom populacijom, što je koristan primjer u modernom svijetu. Pozicija Turske u modernom svijetu dovela je do nove važne međunarodne inicijative. Turska i Španija predvode projekat pod imenom Savez civilizacija. Obje ove države su stoljećima bile dom mješavini kultura. U Španiji su još uvijek vidljivi znakovi bogatog islamskog nasljeđa. Savez civilizacija nastoji oživjeti međunarodnu akciju protiv ekstremizma putem uspostavljanja međunarodnog, interkulturalnog i međureligijskog dijaloga i saradnje. Naročit akcent stavlja se na neutraliziranje napetosti između zapadnog i islamskog svijeta.
Medeniyetler İttifakı projesi işte bu acılara son verme, barış içinde bir arada yaşayabileceğimizi, bir dünyayı inşa etme umuduyla başlatılmıştır. Yola böyle çıktık. Temel amacımız medeniyetler, kültürler ve dinler temelinde şekillenen o ön yargıları ve kutuplaşmaları gidermek, şiddet ve çatışma yerine barış ve işbirliğini hakim kılmaktır.
I think alliance of civilization, meaning, bring various civilizations together and try to learn from each other. And the government of Turkey and the government of Spain, the two countries, with their own strong multicultural experiences, are now leading the charge.
The alliance of civilization should stress core human values that unite every human being on earth. Core: freedom, rule of law, love of family, respect for the elders. These are core values. And human dignity, core values.
Human family will know where the danger point is. And if we go on opposing each other, fighting each other, the end result is nobody is going to survive. And therefore we need to accommodate, we need to learn, we need to converge. Therefore, alliance of civilizations, a necessity that has become accepted as something common to everyone to work together.
Serijal Rijekama ka zapadu je nastojao odraziti ove principe, istražujući priču o civilizaciji iz jedne nove, sveobuhvatne perspektive.
I think it's extremely important that we in the West try to grasp the theme of this series of episodes to show how we as Americans and we in the West owe so much to cross-cultural relations.
I find it more often than not, the extremist voices from the east of the West, or the West, the Muslims or the Christians or the Jews, mainly stems from ignorance. And the Alliance of Civilization is actually, in fact, combating that.
And we have to understand that we are not people who wants to create dissension, who wants to practice extremism, who wants to allow some kind of an idea that promotes animosity. No, we don't. Actually, what we want to do is we want to promote tolerance, we want to promote a better understanding, we want to promote the importance of working together for the benefit of all. That's what we must do.
It's about education. It's about not only giving the knowledge to the humankind, but it's also what kind of knowledge we give, what kind of education we bring, what values we defend when we bring up young generation.
U sljedećoj epizodi vodimo vas na veliko putovanje kroz priču o civilizaciji. Gdje ćemo vam pokazati kako je stvaran ovaj serijal. Osvrnut ćemo se na ovo izvanredno putovanje čovječanstva i naše zajedničko nasljeđe i razmislit ćemo o lekcijama za budućnost.